Good evening. My friends have said I should start. First of all, I'd like to say we're very happy to see you. A couple of days ago, we still were in our little cells, one in Smolensk, one in Karelia, one in Omsk, and now we see all the people in front of us. You know, this leads to a lot of emotion. We're very happy. And since I start, I would like to say thanks. We are very grateful to everyone who has tried their best for this to happen to us. Let me start with Germany and the Chancellor. He met us at the airport. This was, of course, wonderful. And thanks to everyone who helped to make this happen. I know there's still a lot of work that had to be done. It was really clear to all of us. And, of course, it's wonderful for us to be here now. I personally would like to thank my friends that have always been at my side. I also would like to thank my friends and my family, because without the support of our dear ones, nobody would have been able to survive. You know, I can say there are not so many people that were freed. But let me say, it's important to state that many of my friends were saved from death. Yesterday, Mr. Kara-Murza said, I haven't planned it. I didn't think I would survive. Life was given to me again, and it is very important. And yesterday I also thought about all the questions that would come our way. And I thought, I mean, had I been not on this list, I would be still sitting in Karelia in my prison cell. And if I had heard about this event, I would have known that this is an encouragement also to those who are still there in prison. It's a sign of light, in a way. There's thousands of people that are still in Russian prisons, and they have to suffer terrible conditions. And I think they would be happy to hear that it's possible to be saved. Once again, thank you for all the help. I also would like to say a few words about the plans that have occurred to me after all of that happened. You know, if you're in prison, you don't have to do anything. You just hear all these stupid lessons. You have nothing to do. You just can't think. And I heard so many words that were absolutely correct. You should not think that all the people in Russia follow the policy of our state. There are so many citizens that do not agree to what is happening. Of course they are afraid, because not everybody wants to end up in prison like we did. And of course, I also would like to say to the Western world, all the propaganda you get to hear, that Russia is the only country that is surrounded by enemies. This is not true. And I can just turn to the international community, and I would like to ask you, talk to the people in Russia. Reach out to them. Maybe that makes it easier for people in Russia to suffer everything that is happening. Of course, some simple things like education, visa for young Russians, so that Russians can see for themselves they are not enemies outside our country. It is possible to be free. There are people that reach out and also help to get education. All of that would help us a great deal. And the second thing I'd like to say, you know, I have received letters from friends, have received information, and there was this one moment when I heard, we wait for something to end for this or that reason. All of us who are now free, and all of those who were freed before us, we need to support those people who need our assistance. We should do it step by step, and we should not wait. We should take action to support those people that are under pressure at now. And I think this is what we are going to do. What I'm going to do and my friends are going to do. We are going to continue to work towards having a Russia that is free and democratic, and that everybody could be free in Russia. Dear friends, I can just support what my friend said. We are very happy to see you all. It is the second time that I think I am in a film, some kind of film going on a big screen before me. I was in Siberia just a week ago. Yesterday, we were in a Lefortovo prison, and then we are here now at a press conference on the wonderful Rhine River. It's like surreal, that thing that is happening to us. First and foremost, I would like to say a few words of thanks. It is very symbolical that we are here in Bonn, the former capital of Germany. It's a symbol because in our life today, our Russian life, many very bad traditions of the past have come to life against. The traditions of an authoritarian power, the tradition of aggressive wars. And it is also a tradition that has been revived again, to not respect the rights of people. And so it is so wonderful to see that next to these bad traditions, the good ones still survive. And I think one of the very good traditions of free and democratic countries, and here precisely traditions of Germany, are to take initiatives, to do everything they can in order to free political prisoners. And here I think, of course, first and foremost of Russia, our country. I can say there are three very important prisoners, Soviet prisoners and Russian prisoners, that were able to get free thanks to the initiative of Germany. That was Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who was also freed from the Lefortovo prison like we did when we left. Then there's Anatoly Sharansky in '86, who was exchanged on the bridge between Potsdam and Wannsee. And it was also Mr. Khodorkovsky, who was also freed from a Karelia labor camp. And like my colleague, Mr. Pivovarov, he was brought here. He was brought to Berlin using the plane of former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Genscher. Yesterday, we flew to Ankara, and that was the first step to continue this good tradition. We have talked about that to Mr. Scholz, the German Chancellor. We know it was not an easy decision to be taken by the German government. In democracy, it is very difficult to find an easy decision. Easy decisions are taken by dictators. Everything is following the command of the leader. They are cynical considerations leading to simple decisions. But the difference between dictatorship and democracy is that the human life is the ultimate value of a democracy. And this is not the case in a dictatorship. It's like Oskar Schindler's list. And he said, based on the Talmud, if you save one life, you save the life of humankind. Yesterday, 16 human lives were saved. I don't think that in this world there could be something that is more important than saving a human life. And that is why I'm grateful to the Federal Republic of Germany. I am very grateful to the US government, who has actively been involved in what happened yesterday. I am also grateful to the United Kingdom and its government. And I could quote so many organizations, so many people that have helped and that we are grateful to. We would be sitting here for 4 hours or so. Let me just say thanks to all of you who, through many years, have helped to free Russian prisoners of conscience. And you still do that because we have hundreds of those people that are still sitting in prisons only because they have specific political views. And among those political prisoners, they are our fellow citizens that stand up against the brutal, aggressive war that Putin's regime is waging in Ukraine. In Russia, there are many people who are against that, against Putin's war against Ukraine. Don't believe the lies that are being disseminated by the Kremlin propaganda. This may sound funny, but I mean, I was in that prison for a couple of years, and I still believe in the Russian people because I have received so many letters from all over the countries, places I'd never heard about. I received letters from people who sent their support, their solidarity. They were not afraid to write to me that they are against the war. Of course, in a prison, your correspondence is being registered, is being read. But still, they said they are against this war. And I know this war is just the peak of the iceberg. And here I would like to support what was said by Mr. Pivovarov a minute ago. Don't think that Putin's regime is Russia. Kremlin's propaganda wants to make you believe that the whole country supports the aggressive war in Ukraine and the regime. This is a lie. Don't believe this Kremlin lie. Don't believe that this is really, truly reflecting reality. Yesterday, when we left Vnukovo 2, our airport, when our plane set off, I remembered a dissident that has spent lots of years in the Russian camps. In one of his books, he says there was an exchange of prisoners in Zurich where the Louis Kovalan was exchanged. And Bukovsky then said about this exchange, in our country, they can't bring people into prison for a good reason, and they cannot free people. I remembered the words because for half a century or so, nothing has changed in our country. Of course, when we look at what happened in recent years, you have to ask the great leader, according to the Constitution, to be freed. We have said we are not asking for grace. We are not going to write to Putin and say, please free us. We will sit where we are. Article 51 of the Russian Constitution prohibits to evacuate or to take people out of the country against their will. But they did this to us. They put us on a bus and they sent us abroad. They gave us our passports. We came to Germany with a simple identity card. It is only filled in Russian. There is not even the international version of this ID. We do not even have an international passport. So they put us into prison without a reason, and they send us out of the country, not respecting the laws of the country. We went on the first plane yesterday, and all of us who was exchanged, all the 16 persons had a personal FSB agent to accompany them. My FSB agent, who was at my side, when our plane took off, he said, "You know, look at this. You're going to see your home country for the last time." And I said to that FSB agent, of course, they were not wearing a uniform, were in civilian clothes. I said, "You know, I think, I believe, and I even know for sure that I am going to return to Russia. All of us are going to come back to Russia. And there will be a day for all of us when Russia will be free, will be a normal, a civilized European country. I have no doubts that this is going to happen. Let's do everything we can in order to make sure that this day will come true." Good evening, friends. I'm very happy to see you all. It's really true. I say it very openly. I had very conflicting feelings today, lots of emotions. Of course, I'm very happy to be free, to see my dear and loved ones, my friends. And I hope very soon my parents are going to be here so that I can finally hug them again. It's important for me. It is very pleasant. Of course, this brings about a lot of emotions. Of course, I am sincerely grateful, and here I can just subscribe to what was said by my colleagues. I'm very grateful to all the people to bring this very difficult and big exchange. I do understand the humanist motives of all the people that have made sure we are being freed, and that includes the German government. I know these people were all motivated by the will to save human lives. It's a very good motive. I understand it. But at the same time, I also understand the difficult ethical dilemma that the German government and Chancellor Scholz had to overcome. Yesterday, we talked about that when we met Mr. Scholz, the German Chancellor. I said to him, I very well understand the difficult situation you were in when you decided to free a murderer, a person that's very openly gunned down a person in the center of a European capital. I know it's a difficult dilemma to take a murderer, to free him in order to free 16 innocent people that have never committed a crime. It is a difficult dilemma because, of course, it motivates Putin to take new hostages. It's a motivation for Putin in order to make conditions of political prisoners even worse. I do understand that, and I think Chancellor Scholz understands it. And of course, also the critics that you hear and read about in the media understand this dilemma. Independent of the reaction, of course, Putin would never shy away from taking hostages. This is what dictators do. They take hostages. They exploit them in order to evoke humanist emotions of the leaders of other countries, their opponents, who behave like real people. Tyrants, dictators are always tormenting people, and this is what Putin is doing. He is going to do that independent of what governments in the West are going to do, ignore those people or save them. And Putin is not alone. Lukashenko does the same thing. For so many years he's been doing that, and Lukashenko is a very good pupil of Mr. Putin. But still, it is so difficult to accept that I am free because a murderer was freed. Emotionally, it's very difficult for me to take that. You know, I'm very sad for that reason. And I'm also very sad because behind the bars there are still my friends, many political prisoners. Over 1,000 people are still in prison for political motivations. This is what Memorial, the NGO, has found out. Alexei Gorinov is still in prison. He was a member of parliament of one of the districts, a person that is quite old, and he is being tormented in one of those colonies where Navalny was. I know he's a very courageous person. He never complains. He never asks for any favor, but I know his physical and mental state is very difficult. Igor Baryshnikov should be here as well, a person that for his anti-war protests has been put in prison. He is on the brink of death. He needs to be saved. His life needs to be saved. Maria Ponomarenko should be here, a journalist who is behind bars. Denis Holodny, Navalny's lawyers, they should all be here sitting at the table together with us. I mean, we have asked for their freedom. We have appealed many times that they should be set free. Ever since I got into prison, ever since I had my first day there, I have said, I am not ready to be exchanged. I have publicly said I don't want to be on a list of prisoners to be exchanged. This was my very clear position right from the start. I have said I am not going to leave Russia. I see myself as a Russian patriot, a politician and a citizen that should be in Russia. This is where my place is. Maybe even in prison, but I should be in Russia. I understood that my prison term is not only a fight against the aggressive war policy, it is also a fight for my right to live in my country, to conduct an independent policy. I sat in prison in order to fight for my right to speak out. I have always said, this is my right that I'm going to defend, my right to live and work in my own country. Until the very last moment, I fought for that. Until the very last day, I fought for my right to stay in Russia. A couple of days before the exchange took place, the prison governor came to me and has said, you should apply. I said, I cannot write a word to Mr. Putin. He is a tyrant. He is a murderer. I am not going to ask any favor from him. Then a district officer came and said to me, I have to write to Putin so he will set me free. So I understood there is a diplomatic game, so I understood there is something happening. I said, I am not going to ask to be freed. I am not going to admit to any guilt. I am not going to ask a person that I consider a tyrant and a murderer and an enemy of his own country. I am not going to ask him for any favor. Then they brought me to Lefortovo prison. The FSB people were there. I sat in my cell, and they said I should ask for being freed. But then I understood. I'm in Moscow. I didn't know before that. And one day before we were sent out of the country, I understood that we are going to have to leave the country. And I wrote to the prison governor of Lefortovo a personal note, a personal request that I would like to read. My declaration to the prison governor: the Constitution of the Russian Federation prohibits to send citizens of Russia out of the country without their consent. I hereby declare I do not give my consent. I insist on my constitutional right to live in the country that I was born in. And I would like this declaration to be given to the people that have to take the decision. This is the document, my personal document, saying they forced me to leave the country against the law. Everything that happened for me is not seen as an exchange. It is a measure to get people out of the country. It is an expatriation of my person against my own will. I am going to say what I want to do. I want to return. When I arrived in Ankara and in Germany, my first desire was I want to buy a ticket and return to Russia. This is very sincere. Everything of what I feel and what I said was understood by the Secret Service of Russia, the FSB. The FSB officer understood that, and he told me, of course you can return to Russia, like Navalny did. You will be arrested like Navalny, and your life will end, such as Navalny's life ended. For me, this is not the worst thing. For me, the worst thing is that they made it clear to me that my return to Russia will make it impossible for any other prisoner to be exchanged in the foreseeable future. They made me understand that if I decide to return to Russia, that will strengthen those people who say at the moment Chancellor Scholz made a mistake. It will strengthen the position of those who say you should not free a murderer. Of course, if I return to Russia, they will say, we have freed a murderer, but Yashin is going to return. Of course, I understand it makes it more difficult to negotiate the exchange of other people in the near future. I understand absolutely that Alexei Gorin, who was on the list until the very last moment, and many others were on that list. Until the very last moment, they were on the list of prisoners to be exchanged, and then they were deleted from that list. They are being tormented. They suffer. They are hostages. And I know I also am responsible for the life of my comrades. It is emotionally so difficult for me to take. I can't tolerate these feelings. This manipulation, this intrigue of the Kremlin, this is just a sign that they mock the whole world. If a person says, I don't want to leave my country, and they just send him out of the country against his will, instead of freeing those people who need the freedom, who should be sitting here, who could die in prison today or tomorrow. It is hard to take that, to accept that I'm here. I know my decision should not be based on an impulse. I know I have to work towards freeing Ponomarenko, Baryshnikov, Krieger, and many other political prisoners. And I should also continue to work towards a political amnesty to be proclaimed in Russia so that all political prisoners can be free again. But let me repeat again, I am never going to play the role of an immigrant. My goal is to return to Russia. I am a citizen of Russia. I am a Russian politician. I am a Russian patriot. My goal is to have a free and happy Russia. All my efforts will be towards getting back to my home country in order to help to bring about a prosperous, happy, free Russia. This is what I dedicated my life for, and I'm going to continue to do that, dedicate my life for Russia. If you have questions, we are happy to answer them. But make sure you tell us who you are and who you ask. Do we have microphones there?
Mr. Kara-Murza, is it possible to answer a question in... Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Ina Baltes. I'm working for ZDF, German television. Mr. Kara-Murza, is it possible to say a few sentences in English? Because for us it's easier with the translation. Putin, the legal procedure is that Mr. Putin had to give mercy to you, to free you, and did you sign something to plead guilty? That's the normal procedure you have to do. Did you sign something? And second question, do you think you will ever go back to Russia?
Okay, thanks for both questions. On your first question, I refer back to the words that I said in the introduction about Vladimir Bukovsky, the prominent Soviet-era dissident, writer, longtime prisoner of conscience, who wrote on his own exchange in December of 1976 at Zurich International Airport for Chilean Communist Party leader Luis Corvalán, that in our country, then in the Soviet Union, they can't arrest you and they can't release you according to the law. And unfortunately, in the half a century that ensued since then, the situation hasn't changed. You're absolutely right in suggesting that normal procedure requires that in order for a prisoner to be released, he or she has to petition the head of state, the president, for a pardon, and then that pardon decree is signed. Last Tuesday, and again, it feels surreal that we're only talking about days ago. It feels like it's been 3 years, but last Tuesday, the 23rd of July, I was suddenly taken from my cell by 2 prison officers, taken into an office under a big portrait of Mr. Putin. And on the desk, there was a blank piece of paper, a pen, and a prepared sort of example statement. And the senior officer invited me to sit down on the desk and write a petition according to the example. The example petition was addressed to Mr. Putin. It spoke of admitting guilt. It spoke of remorse for what I have done. First, honestly, I thought it was a joke. I just laughed at them when I saw it. But, you know, the man didn't seem to have a very good sense of humor. He asked me, well, aren't you going to write it? I said, of course I'm not going to write it. Do you even know approximately who I am? I mean, you have internet, unlike me. You can go and check my bio. Of course I'm not going to write it. He continued to not get any humor. He said, well, why won't you write it? And I said, well, first of all, because I don't consider Mr. Putin to be a legitimate president of my country. I consider him to be a dictator, a usurper, and a murderer. And I'm not going to sign any petitions for mercy to him. But secondly, because obviously I'm not going to admit any guilt, because I'm not guilty of anything. And so for those two very obvious reasons, I'm not going to sign this ridiculous paper that they're asking me. So they asked me, I think, 5 times. I said no, so they led me back to my prison cell, but that wasn't the end of it. Because on Thursday, last Thursday, the 25th of July, the same 2 officers came in, took me back to the same prison office. This time gave me another piece of paper saying that our conversation 2 days before was recorded on a video camera, and that now I have to write an official explanation of why I said such things about our dear President Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. And I said, you know, as Mikhail Bulgakov, the great Russian writer, once wrote, it's easy and pleasant to tell the truth. I said, give me the pen, this time I will write. And so I put everything down on paper. I said that I consider Putin to be not a legitimate president, to be a dictator, a usurper, and a murderer, who is personally responsible for the murder of Boris Nemtsov, who is personally responsible for the murder of Alexei Navalny, who is personally responsible of the deaths of thousands of civilians, including children in Ukraine, including a recent bombing of a children's hospital in Kiev at the beginning of July, and that I'm not going to sign any petitions for mercy because I'm not guilty of anything, and that the criminals are those who are waging this war, not those who are speaking out against it, as all of us are. Signed it, put my name, put the date, and gave them the piece of paper. And then at 3 a.m. On night from Saturday to Sunday, I was woken up by the same two prison officers, and they had a really busy week last week. Suddenly told that I had 20 minutes to take all my stuff. A police convoy arrived, but they were dressed in civilian clothes. And then they took me into the airport, handcuffed, on a plane to Moscow, to Leforovo, the FSB prison. And I have to say that after spending a straight year in solitary confinement, I spent a year out of 2.5 years in solitary confinement. I wasn't sure I was still able to speak in any language. It was something out of this world to suddenly, you know, be in the middle of an airport, busy with people, and I don't have enough words, again, in any language to express it. And then you know all the rest. It was Leforovo. Nobody explained anything. We were all held in. Of course, none of us knew that the other ones were there. And actually, at some point, I thought that I was just going to be let out and get shot. And we had a conversation yesterday with our colleagues on the bus, on the FSB bus, and then on the plane. And I wasn't alone in thinking that, because that was another option that was possible. In our country, anything's possible under this regime. But you know what happened in the end. And so, go back to Vladimir Bukovsky's words. In Russia, they cannot arrest you according to the law, and they cannot release you according to the law either. I didn't sign a petition for mercy or for pardon, but I was still pardoned, even though I didn't ask for it. As Ilya just said, according to the Russian Constitution, Article 61, it is expressly forbidden to expel Russian citizens from Russia without their consent. Nobody asked our consent, we never gave our consent, yet we're here. And by Russian law, you have to have a special foreign travel passport to cross the border. None of us have one. We just have our normal internal Russian passports that are not, you're not allowed to travel abroad with this. But we're sitting in Bonn, all of us with these passports. That's the first part of your question. And on the second part, each of us, there were 16 of us on the Russian side. Prisoners, either political prisoners, Russian political prisoners, or foreign journalists, or German citizens who were part of the exchange from the Russian side. Each of us was accompanied by our personal FSB officer, who was sitting on the left side or on the right side, depending on the row, next to each prisoner on the plane. And my FSB officer, if that's the correct expression. The moment our plane was taking off, he told me, look out the window, it's the last time you're seeing your motherland. And I turned to this guy and I laughed once again, and I said, look, I didn't know his name, I didn't know his rank, obviously. I didn't feel the need to inform us of all those things. I told him, look, man, I'm a historian by education. I don't only feel, I don't only believe, I know that I'll be back in my home country. And it'll be much quicker than you think. Пожалуйста.
Do you know anything about the selection process that was taking place, that you three happened to be on that list?
I can speak for myself. Colleagues speak for themselves, although I think you'll find our answers very similar. We do not know anything. I can tell you the moment. Okay, let me tell you first of all, I was certain I was going to die in Putin's prison. I did not believe I will ever see my wife again. I did not believe I'll ever see my family again. This feels really surreal. This feels like a film. I was certain I was going to die in Putin's prison. None of us knew until the last moment. I only realized that what this was yesterday morning when I was let out of the cell in Lefortovo, put on a bus, and the first person I saw there was my friend and colleague Andrei with his FSB guy, and the second person I saw was my friend and colleague Ilya with his FSB guy. And only then, and then I saw also Oleg Orlov from Memorial, Alsu Kurmasheva, the journalist from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and others, and only at that moment I realized what it actually was. So we didn't even know that an exchange was happening, let alone of what you're asking, how the selection worked and what the criteria were. And since arriving to Germany yesterday, we were all held in a quarantine in a medical facility for medical testing and evaluations. This is our first venture into the outside world. So we have absolutely no idea. And the only thing I do know is that this, I hope to know more, by the way, in the coming hours, perhaps in the coming days. But what I do know is that this never have happened, this never would have happened without the passionate, sustained, both public and private effort, with public and private commitment by governments, by organizations, and by individuals who have dedicated their time, their effort, and their hearts and souls to making sure that at least some, a very small part of us, a very small part of those hundreds, more than 1,000 people who are sitting in Putin's prisons for the crime of opposing war and opposing a dictatorship have been let out. And I just want to second what Ilya Yashin said, that this is just a drop in the ocean, the exchange yesterday, because so many innocent people who've never committed a crime in their life are being held in torturous conditions, either physically or psychologically or both, in Putin's prisons for the only crime of speaking the truth, for the only crime of opposing the war, for the only crime of opposing a dictator. And it is my hope that governments, organizations, and passionate, committed individuals in the free world will not only continue to speak about the importance of human rights, about the importance of human life, about the importance of values, but will continue to act, will continue to take steps to make sure that more of those people who never should have spent a minute behind bars are free, as we are free today, thanks to all those countless, amazing and passionate individuals.
Allow me to answer in Russian. A prison governor is like a tsar, is like a king everywhere. If the prison governor comes to your cell at 6 in the morning and asks you to pack up your things, then something extraordinary is happening. So we understood when this happened that something important is going on.
Ilya Barabanov
from BBC. First of all, we would say many of your friends are very happy that you're finally free. Many of your friends couldn't come personally, but we are happy to see you. And we are very happy that very soon you're going to meet your families. A short bureaucratic question, if I may. You said you were only given your identity card. You left the country without an international passport. You only just exchanged. Have you been able to sort of talk to the German authorities what your status will be when you are staying in Germany or in the EU? Are you going to get political asylum? Are you going to get any kind of passport? I mean, of course, bureaucracy is so important for all of us. That's your life. For us, we have no bureaucracy whatsoever in our life. We understand very well that when there is political will, it will always prevail. It will always prevail over laws and all of bureaucratic obstacles. We do not have international passports. When I was arrested, they took away my own ID. And I came now to Germany with an identity, a Russian identity card that isn't even valid anymore. So I have no document to identify myself. You have to go to the internet to find out who I am. That's the only document about me. And of course, we have talked to the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They also said, well, we will have to see. Of course, the situation is very extraordinary. They're going to find, to think about something. What they are going to think about, what they are going to find at the end, we do not know yet. Of course, the most important question for us is, are they going to deport us? Are they going to arrest us? I know this is not going to happen. We can feel free. But of course, a legal or bureaucratic answer is an answer we cannot give yet. Of course, normally you get a prison release form. Well, we were not given that. And I mean, I can only speak for myself. In my case, the vice governor of the Lefortovo prison came to my cell, and he gave me this kind of release form. I've never seen anything like it, and I've read it, seen it in the literature, and usually for this release form they take your photograph a day before, and he said, of course, I have to photograph you. And of course, this release form is a wonderful document. Of course, it has your name and your date of birth. And of course, there's also the sentence I received, 25 years. And the reason to be released is pardon given by the President of the Russian Federation without a clear date. And at the end of this form, this release form, it says he is going to be released to Moscow for further investigation. So this is my home address in Moscow was mentioned there. This is the only document we received. And usually this form is given to the prisoner upon release. This is the form he takes when going home. I have said, can you please give it to me? When are we going to receive this form? And they said, don't worry, you're going to get it on the plane. But of course, on the plane, we did not get anything. No release form, no nothing, no document. So this is the rule of law that we experience. This is what we've experienced from beginning to end. As far as your first question is concerned regarding our legal status, well, I have a special situation. I have a dual citizenship. I do not have the British passport on me. I only was given my ID, my Russian ID, and my wife and children are in the United States. So, as I said in the beginning, I know that I'm sitting here and can talk to you also because of the efforts of the this U.S. government. Yesterday on the plane to Ankara, the first phone call I received, the first call after 2.5 years in prison, was a phone call from President Biden. So after a long time in prison in solitary confinement, it was so difficult for me to talk to him, to say thanks for all you've done to free us. Thanks for sending us free. And he said to me, human lives are the most precious thing, the highest value we have. And I think that Germany's government and also the EU governments are going to continue to support us. They all have worked together for us to be freed. And in spite of all the international rules, we were allowed to enter the Schengen zone, to enter Germany. And I'm sure they are going to find a solution, maybe a non-standard one, but they are going to help us as people that have a legal status that they have not because of their own fault.
Для здоровья физического, для физического здоровья. Как вы себя чувствуете физически? Как вы себя чувствуете сейчас?
How do you feel at the moment, both physically and mentally and morally? Right after coming to Germany, we were taken to hospital, and they said it might be a good idea after 2 or 3 years of prison. It would be good to have a medical examination in order to see what your physical status is, your health status is. And this morning, a delegation of doctors came to see us. They woke us up at 8 in the morning and they said, all right, we have seen your analysis, your examination, we have your blood tests done, and we've seen you have vitamin D deficit. I don't even know why. Why do we all have a vitamin D deficit? Of course, that's quite clear. Vitamin D is what you only get when you have a lot of sun exposure. And of course, we were all under a roof. We sat in our cells. And we had a very strict prison regime. Every one of us has been in a cell. Volodya was in a normal prison regime. Andrei was in a very hard prison regime, and only through the bars of our windows we could see the sun. But other than that, physically speaking, we are all right. Our physical state in prison depends a lot on your psychological condition. If you don't fall apart, if you don't lose your discipline, you can keep up, you can continue. We all understood we have an important mission. And a mission that we have imposed on ourselves. We have the mission to help our country, and that gives you a lot of strength. You understand you're on the side of freedom, and you are on the side of the truth. The others are on the side of evil and lies. Knowing you're on the right side gives you strength. And getting the support, getting the letters from all these people from Russia, from people all over the world, it helped. And I would like to thank you. I have received tens of thousands of letters. It's difficult to believe. Really, I received all these letters from all over Russia, from all over the world. This was my support, my pillar that gave me energy and health, and that helped me emotionally, and it helped me to survive every day. I understood I am not alone. There are so many people the same like me, so I'm absolutely okay. Yeah, it was really said, support is important, and it is especially important when you understand you're right. If you know you're right, you can even survive the most difficult conditions. You understand, at the end of the day, we are going to be free. And this helps you to be strong, to continue athletic activities. Well, you can train. You understand, you receive letters, and of course the prison administration tries to put pressure on you. And that also helps you to offer resistance. And so that is why we got the diagnosis today, only a deficit of vitamin D, nothing else. Let me also add, regarding health status, I cannot complain about my health, but it is important to say anyway that so many fellow citizens, friends, colleagues are still in Putin's prisons and colonies just because of their conviction, their beliefs. And let me say that, when there is a parliamentary meeting or when there are press conferences and when they talk about torture against prisoners, here I would like to talk about my personal beliefs before I came to prison. Most people, when they hear about torture against prisoners, think about physical tortures, that they would break your bones, expose you to electroshocks or whatsoever. They don't hardly ever think about the psychological torture, and it can be worse than physical torture. As it is clearly shown in international law, we have the minimum standards of the United Nations regarding the treatment of persons deprived of liberty. And there are provisions saying that long-term solitary confinement is officially equal to physical torture, because you're deprived of your social contacts. You need social contacts like you need water and food. So long-term solitary confinement is torture. When I read the United Nations provisions about torture, I laughed in the beginning. And they say torture is solitary confinement for more than 15 days. I have been in solitary confinement for over 10 months. And those international rules were all violated by Russia. Navalny has been sitting in a solitary confinement in a very small cell without any communication, without opportunity to get some fresh air. This is a moral and psychological torture, and there are many other ways and means to torture people psychologically. But one of the most beloved traditional Soviet traditions that is still alive and is still used against political prisoners, not only the three of us, but also many others who are still there. And that is why I'm talking about the hundreds of prisoners in Russia that are still in prison. Our government, ever since the Soviet times, has not only fought against their opponents, they have also fought a war against their families, a tradition ever since Stalin's times. Well, you remember, Yuzhov, the KGB commander, who also has called the families enemies of the people, and so they were harassed. This is still happening until the present day. I spent in prison 2 years and 4 months. Only one call could I make with my wife and two with my lawyer for over 2 years, and this is the standard situation for all of us. Yesterday I talked to Andrei after we hadn't seen for 2 years, and he said he was allowed to talk to his son on the phone only 3 times. This is not only done to us, it is also done to our families. When you sit there in that prison, in this special security prison, They don't allow you to go to church. I was always an Orthodox Christian. I have never been given permission to go to church. They said, you cannot visit church when you're in prison. That's it. So it's so evident that Putin's regime always says that we have our traditional values, we want to defend, to save the families, we want to save family values. This is what they say openly, but they do not allow their political opponents to have contacts with families and go to church. And this is the condition for hundreds of people in our, hundreds of prisoners in our country. I like to support what Andrei and Ilya have said. In this situation, in this torturous condition, it helps a great deal to know that you're on the right side. It may sound pathetic. 20 years ago or so, I have made a documentary film about dissidents in the Soviet Union. They chose freedom. That's the title of this film. I asked Bukovsky what helped him to survive all these tortures in the camps and prison, and he has said only one sentence: I know I was right. I thought, well, nice words. I put it in the film, but today I have gone through the same experience, and I know it's not just beautiful words. It is really true. When you know.
So the words there of Vladimir Kara-Murza, I know I was right. He, alongside Andrei Pivovarov and Ilya Yashin, those are the three Russian dissidents who were released from Russian prisons yesterday, giving a press conference today in Bonn, here in Germany. Over the course of the last hour or so, the three men, the three Russian men, made a point of remembering those who are still being held inside Russian prisons. And two of them gave really intriguing insights into life, not only inside the prison, but the process by which they were freed. Two of them saying they actually did not want to be freed. Watching that press conference along with me is Grzegorz Szymanowski, DW reporter. Pick up on that point, Grzegorz. This idea that the last two speakers, Vladimir Kara-Murza and Ilya Yashin, talked about how the guards kept coming to them and saying, in order to be released, just sign this document saying we did everything. And they said, no, and I don't want to go.
Yes, this was really an extraordinary testimony from Ilya Yashin, who first mentioned this. His testimony on how he was being asked by prison guards to ask Vladimir Putin for clemency, to ask to be let out of prison and out of Russia. And he said very clearly and very visibly angered that he really was against the idea of leaving Russia. He was against any exchange, and he really said that he referred to the Russian constitution, which actually bans Russian authorities to expel anyone from the country against their own will. So Ilya Yashin said that he wrote a declaration in which he said that he actually doesn't want to be exchanged, and then nevertheless the Russian authorities proceeded with this exchange. Same for Vladimir Kara-Murza. He also said that he didn't sign any request to Vladimir Putin to be exchanged. So this is really very extraordinary, and this one detail that Ilya Yashin gave to us when he told to the Russian security official who was accompanying him on the way to Ankara that the first thing he wants to do is to buy a ticket to go back to Russia. And then the FSB security official who was accompanying him said, well, sure, you can come back, you can go back, but you can go back just like Alexei Navalny did, meaning that the only thing that awaits you in Russia is probably death. So this really shows also in the high spirits in which these men are and how determined they are in their fight against Putin still.
OK, thank you for that, Grzegorz. Grzegorz Szymanowski, DW reporter. More, of course, on that press conference given by those three Russian dissidents who are now free and at liberty here in Germany. We'll have more on that at the top of the hour. This is DW.